We're with Jeffrey Capeci, who is the chairman of the Newtown Legislative Council, and the budget question we had for Mr. Capeci is this. There are concerns being voiced because the Finance Board can pass on budget recommendations by simple majority, while in order for the Council to override the Board of Finance recommendations, it would require a supermajority. Can you explain the process by which the Council handles its stage of the budget process, and whether or not the supermajority requirement potentially hampers the Council from delivering the optimum budget proposal to the voters?
Sure. The process is defined by our charter. Our charter is the document that defines how our government functions, the structure of the government, and this section of the charter was put into place during a charter revision in 2001, where the voters voted on the changes that created the Board of Finance, took 6 members from the Legislative Council, moved them to the Board of Finance, and gave them the purview to really analyze the numbers of the budget from a fiscal perspective, and to look at the budget and decide what number is in the best interest of the town of Newtown. The same charter gives the Legislative Council a completely different perspective. We have constituencies. There are 12 members of the council coming from 3 different districts around town, and we interact with our constituents on a daily basis. We think about what their concerns are, what they want us to spend the money on, what they don't want us to spend the money on, and we weigh that against the recommendation that we receive from the Board of Finance. Now, the Board of Finance, another aspect of the charter is the 2/3 majority required to add to the budget, and that's a check that was added to the charter, similar to many of the other checks and balances we have in government. And the reason for that is to make sure that one body doesn't usurp the authority of another body, and unless there's broad support and it's the right decision. And that's why that provision was added to the charter. Does it hinder our ability to the process that the council follows? I don't think so. There's no evidence of it. For example, last year, in practice that is, last year we added money because a supermajority wanted to do so, and that was done at budget season last year. This year there was a minority of people who wanted to add money to the budget, so that didn't even pass the majority threshold to begin with. Could it hinder? I think it could, but I think the putting that language into the charter was put there to hinder, because they didn't want the writers of the charter didn't want the council to be able to act against a recommendation of the Board of Finance unless it had broad support within the community.
We're with John Kortze, chairman of the Newtown Board of Finance, and the budget question that he's being asked is this. Is it possible for the town budget to be less next year than it is this year? If not, why not? And if so, what are some of the ways the Finance Board might advise to achieve that outcome?
Well, the simple answer to the question is yes. You can have a lower budget year over year in the town of Newtown on an overall basis. To understand the answer to the question, it might be easier if you break the budget down into its 3 simple parts. And again, I'm oversimplifying, but one is the level of spending on the Board of Selectmen side, or the town side. The other is the level of spending on the Board of Education side, or the school side. And the third piece is the revenue that the town receives. The largest portion of which is the actual taxes that we collect from citizens and homeowners in the town. The overwhelming majority of revenue that the town gets comes from the taxpayer. We also do get revenue from the state and federal government in the form of grants and things of that nature. So, when you consider the revenue piece of the equation, it is possible for the town to receive a greater amount of revenue year over year, which would help offset a tax increase and help to provide a decrease. On the town side, we could have a situation where the town presents and approves a level of spending that was lower than the previous year's spending, thereby producing a decrease in taxes year over year. On the Board of Education side, it's a little bit different, however. It's my understanding that we currently cannot lower the level of spending year over year on the Board of Education side. We must at least maintain the level of spending. However, recently at the state level there has been discussion and a bill floating around on allowing municipalities to reduce the level of spending year over year on the education side. I've only read briefly about it. I'm not quite sure exactly where that bill stands, but the way that it was written at the time, which was recently, was that a town could lower the level of education spending if certain criteria were met. And the content of the criteria in the current bill that's being discussed is if enrollment were to decline. But currently, we legally cannot. So, if you put all of those pieces together, we could have a situation where revenue was a little bit better. We could have a situation in that same year where the spending on education was the same or a slight increase, and we could have a decrease in the town side. And if you put all that together, we could have a situation where the taxes were down year over year overall.